Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael, and I've just downloaded this free Scalescenes kit from the Scalescenes website, both in N scale, which is what I work in, and 00. My intention is to put this together and make a special Chandwell video to show all about how Scalescenes kits work, and some hints and tips as how to get the most out of them. Scalescenes has been instrumental in everything that Chandwell is. By putting those kits together to start with, I learnt the basics of scratch building, and it gave me the confidence to use the Scratchbuilders Yard from Scalescenes to essentially build out the whole of Chandwell. As part of the special video, I wanted to include some snippets of an interview that I did with John Whiffen, who is the man behind Scalescenes. But when I recorded that interview, it turned into much more like a conversation between old friends. It was a really interesting conversation and I learnt a lot. And I thought, rather than take little bits of it and put it into the video, I'd make the whole conversation available for Chandwell viewers now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over to myself and John, which we recorded last week, and we'll hear all about Scalescenes from the man himself, John Whiffen. John, thank you for joining me on Chandwell. I think as someone who's downloaded your kits and been using them for about over 10 years, nearly 12, 13 years, quarter of my life almost, it's really, really nice to meet you at last, because you've been a big part of my modelling journey, and obviously Chandwell wouldn't be what it was without Scalescenes, so I'm really pleased to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me on the channel. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. It's like meeting a hero in some ways. It's quite funny. So, thanks. I mean, I wasn't joking. I think without Scalescenes, Chandwell wouldn't be what it is, because obviously I downloaded your kits and, they're so simple to put together and yet so effective. And I think it was something that, as a new modeller, if you like, or someone who returned to modelling from since the 1980s as a kid, to be able to make this kind of stuff high quality for cheap as well. I mean, it doesn't cost much. It really got me moving on, and it wasn't until I got used to your techniques and put a lot of your buildings together that I realised, scratch building isn't that hard. All the Scalescenes kit is, it's bits to cut out and glue together. Why can't I draw the bits myself? And the Scalescenes Scratchbuilders Yard is everything I need for it. So it's such a resource. So what I'm interested in is, how did you get into it? Did you used to scratch build beforehand?
Well, I did, yeah. So, I mean, growing up, as a kid, I was building models all the time, and I built had layouts, going around my bedroom and all sorts of things, and all the buildings that I constructed. I built, sort of loads of super quick when I was a kid, and I've always been interested in art and design. The point that started me off on the journey 20 years ago now. Wow. It would be 2005 when I started. So at the time I was working as a book illustrator, and I was staying up until 2:00 in the morning working on all these historical illustrations for various books and things like that. And I was thinking, oh man, there's got to be a better way to earn a living than doing this. So I was just over at visiting this friend of mine, who's this software engineer. One of his clients who'd bought his software happened to be this fellow who was designing like Dungeons and Dragons castles as PDF files. Yeah. But they were fairly simple. They were just like little fold-in things like this, you see. And anyway, like literally standing next to him in front of his computer next to him, I just had this aha moment. I was just like, holy moly, I could do the same thing for model railways. I don't think anyone else has done that. That's amazing. So I sort of scurried home and sort of, back then, like 2005 or 2004, I guess it would have been, the internet was sort of still fairly early days. So there wasn't that much to search for, but sure enough, nobody else seemed to be doing it. So I thought to myself, wow, I thought I've got an interest in railway modelling. There's a real, I've obviously got my graphic design skills and my interest in British architecture, because I sort of grew up in the UK and came over to Australia when I was a teenager. So I've sort of got it's sort of like hardwired into my brain, I guess, the way the buildings and architecture look. But anyway, I went home and then I thought, great, I'm going to give this a go. So I took a deep breath, said no more book illustrations, and then I basically got a part-time job 3 days a week and working as a graphic designer. And then the other 2 days I spent just developing those basic basic starter range, which is still, some of them are still kicking around on the website now, but in various forms. But so yeah, I did that for a year, and then basically I had a sort of a bit of a starting range. Maybe I think it was about 5-10 kits, and then I sort of had no idea what I was doing. I sort of just built this really crude sort of website and pressed go, and to my surprise, almost from day one, people started buying my kits, which was just like, wow, okay, amazing. That's really interesting. So basically, shortly after that, I basically just threw in my 3-day part-time job and basically decided to do Scalescenes full time, and I've pretty much been doing it full time for the last 20 years. So
incredible. Yeah. I've often wondered, I mean, the amount of work that goes into your kits you can see. I often wondered whether it was your full-time occupation or whether you were just trying to do it on the side and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's always funny. I always have a little chuckle when on the Facebook users group, the Scalescenes Facebook users group, and somebody sort of critiques one of my kits or has some little negative comment about, and all these people jump up and sort of say, oh, ease up. He's not his day job. He's only just doing this as a sort of a part-time hobby. And I'm like, oh no, it's definitely my full-time job. So
are you giving us permission to critique more wildly then?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So you mentioned there obviously you're based in Australia. I think anyone who's ordered Scale Glaze will know. I've always been quite intrigued as to why the UK. What's the connection?
As I say, I sort of grew up in the UK. Came out to Australia when I was with my family when I was about 13. So I guess it's really strange. I sort of really, despite my accent, I actually still consider myself, I guess, to be British. I suppose, and go back to visit my family. But most of my family's still over there. I just grew up modelling British railways. I used to spend a lot of time train spotting in the 70s and early 80s all around sort of southern England, and I was always building models of British layouts. So it was obviously sort of, as I say, it was sort of in my sort of DNA, I suppose, British railway modelling, I suppose. So it was a natural fit for me to do that. There's like a fine tradition of card modelling in the UK. It's unrivaled really in terms of that interesting and acceptance of card modelling. So it's been going a long time, I suppose. Card modelling, and going back to what you were saying about scratch building and how I sort of Scalescenes introduced you to scratch building. Well, in a way, I guess I feel like I'm just continuing on a tradition of card modelling and scratch building in sort of kit form, if that makes sense. The techniques are basically the same as the same sort of techniques that John H. Ahern used just after the Second World War, when they were, working on, pendant and things like that. I mean, that's card, and it's found objects and just like this book here. Here we go. So this book here, if you look, if you've ever been able to track down, if anyone is able to track down that book, it's quite old now. I mean, I think this print's from the 1950s or something like that. But all the principles are there. All the techniques are there. So all I did was I just took some of John H. Ahern's techniques and I guess sort of formalised them into some sort of kit form and added the instructions, basically. So
like a repeatable form, isn't it? I think that's the beauty of it.
So in some ways, you're modelling in a tradition that dates right back to post-war England, I suppose, when card modelling was really quite and probably before that, I'd say. But
that's good. It's nice to know.
Yeah. You got a copy of that?
I found it's a similar one. It's very similar.
Yeah, good,
it's
Dave Rowe. Yeah, I've got a copy of that as well.
And I was laughing as I looked at that. I found it at a railway exhibition, and I thought, a lot of this is what I do. It hasn't changed. Yeah. So you're right. It's funny, and certainly with the Scalescenes kit, I know you've got some nice tricks. So the Scalescenes, the way that you do the downspouts as a layer that just sticks out a little bit further, it's a lovely trick and a really nice effect. But it's just
well, thanks.
It's just getting these techniques, isn't it, and repeating them.
Yeah, absolutely.
In many ways.
And you'll see the sort of evolution. So talking about those early kits that I developed, sort of way back in 2005. So, apologies to everybody about the downspouts on some of the earlier kits, but, I'm getting there. That's one of my jobs over the next sort of next year or something like that, is to just basically just rework some of those really early kits. And because, you can sort of see that sort of evolution, I suppose, if you build some of those early kits, and it was so frustrating because I was almost there, like the answer was there, but I just didn't push it just a little bit far. I just didn't give it an extra little shove, and I would have had the downspouts problem sort of solved a long time ago. But basically, But anyway, so all those things are just a sort of an evolution, I suppose, and I guess that helps me develop kits in terms of the design process. It means that I can fairly confidently sort of create kits on screen and basically be able to work my way through problems that I've solved, like 5 years ago, and know that, that flat is going to fit around that corner quite satisfactorily. I can just cut and paste it basically, or I know the dimensions that are going to fit. So, so it's not as though I'm sort of having to redesign everything. So everything is just a bit of an evolution, I suppose. Each kit is just a sort of a slight variation on the previous one, but just a different building. So
it's certainly what I've seen in Chandwell. I don't think you could see to look at it, but I look back and I think, that's how I've evolved as the town has gone down the baseboard. It's, just in techniques and things, and you base upon your own. If every model is 1% better than the one before, sooner or later you're going to be so much better than when you started. And I think it's just a nice way to look at it. I was actually thinking along those lines myself earlier, in that with scratch building, what I do, I can iterate, I can try things. If it doesn't work, throw it out, and all of that kind of thing. And I guess that's what creating a Scalescenes kit must be like. But I think I know my own skill level, and I know when I'm drawing it, I think I'm never going to be able to cut that out. That's just far too fiddly or whatever. For Scalescenes, you've got someone like who I was 13 years ago, had never cut out a bit of paper before in his life, and then you've also got seasoned modelers. There's people on the Facebook group who make every single one of your kits within hours of it being created now. So people who've got a lot of skill. How do you decide what to put in and what to leave out, and how to pitch it at the right level?
Right, that's a really hard one. I mean, as you'll see from the Facebook group, there are parts of some of the kits that people do, pardon the pun, sort of come unstuck on. I mean, but I guess I try, once again, a lot of the techniques are sort of fairly tried and true, I suppose. Most of the people that do have a grumble are mainly N modelers. No. What can I say? You're working in a tiny scale.
You've only got a self to blame.
So, but by and large, I as I say, I've sort of developed these techniques, and I know where, I know once I'm building them. I mean, there's features that I add that just fall by the wayside. I just sort of, as I'm cutting them out and trying to glue them on, I just go, forget about that. You've got to do it again. You've got to redesign that. It's just too fiddly for. I mean, there's lots of stuff I'd like to do in the style of Chandwell and Adrian Cook's stuff that you've referenced. There's lots of stuff. I mean, in some ways, you've got a little bit more freedom to sort of explore. How to create little corbels and stuff to fit underneath. Fit underneath ledges and things like that. I just don't have that luxury, because I just know that they're going to be impossible to cut out, especially in N. So I basically just have to sort of work around things like that. Just a bit of trial and error, a bit of experience, I suppose, to sort of hopefully end up with something. But at the end of the day, we're in the business of model making, and part of the advantage of Scalescenes, I suppose, is that you can just sort of, if you make a complete disaster of a section, or even the whole kit, just start again, just print it out and start again, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's I don't want to make them so simple that they're sort of they're sort of more along the lines of the sort of
soulless,
commercial.
I think, is the word.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, Metcalf and Superquick have got their sort of role in the market, and they're far more popular than Scalescenes, I dare say. But I guess I'm pitching it as a slightly different sort of modeler, I suppose, someone that's really interested in maybe just pushing their modelling skills just a little bit further and learning some techniques perhaps, and like yourself, maybe just run with those techniques and then, have a go and scratch building a building, that's my goal, is to really sort of nurture that modelling instinct, I suppose, in people, rather than...
That's lovely. I mean, that definitely worked with me, and I really like that you maintain the Scratchbuilders Yard. So you're not just Scalescenes kits. Here, these are all of these resources, and the resources that are available in there are just incredible. I've built the entire town using 99% Scalescenes Scratchbuilders Yard stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
You keep adding new things to it as well, don't you? I mean, you've got a new roof tile pack coming out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's going to be out very early in the new year. So I've got it all. Like most of the Scratchbuilders Yard stuff is just sort of like a happy byproduct of my kits, basically. Right. So I think from memory, I needed quite a large expanse of weathered sort of lichen mossy roof tiles for the lifeboat station kit that I released last year, and so I actually just pushed me to develop a much larger section of that particular texture. So now I've sort of got that and a couple of other nice sort of textures that I'll be able to pull together into yet another product to go in the Scratchbuilders Yard. So yeah, so it's actually quite a nice little it's quite a nice little happy byproduct to the range, really. So yeah.
Fantastic. So you mentioned my friend Adrian there, who does some amazing buildings on the Facebook group. I mean, and you also mentioned, people like us who are scratch building, we've got the ability to use found objects, because you can't put into your instructions, can you? At this point, glue a little silver sugar ball on top and paint it stone colour. It just doesn't work. But I mean, Adrian is the absolute master of the found objects, if you like. The things he buys and cuts up and sticks onto his buildings are incredible. I never knew Adrian before, so that's something else I've got to thank Scalescenes for, and the Facebook group and all of the stuff. I met Adrian. We've become really, really good friends with him and Tim and others that we share with on the group. I think last time I looked, you've got 12.4 thousand members on that Facebook group, and you seem to
something like that.
You're active on it all the time as well. I mean, you must be quite proud of the sense of community that's grown up around Scalescenes. It's
a great little group, It's surprisingly, it's really positive. I mean, and a big thank you to the moderators as well, Chris and Mike. They do a great job because I'm in Australia. Obviously, a lot happens while I'm asleep, so they do a great job of just keeping an eye on things while I'm asleep. But yeah, it's a great little community, and it's really positive and nurturing. That's what I like about it. There's hardly any. The moderators and I have hardly had to pull the plug on any of the posts or comments. It's been quite amazing, actually, which is quite some feat for Facebook, you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely, on the internet in general, 100%.
So yeah, it's been really good, really good.
I get the same with Chandwell, with my channel. You read a lot of things about how negative comments are on YouTube and all that kind of thing. And touch wood, I've hardly had any. Maybe people are interested in card modelling are generally nice folk. I don't know. So something that I often get asked on my channel is just, you should be using 3D printing for this. You should be using a laser cutter for that and all that kind of stuff. And I know that you do via someone on the Facebook page. You do there is available laser cut parts for Scalescenes kits for those who are unable or unwilling to to cut out the little bits. But I think I don't know about you, but I find a lot of pleasure from the cutting out and the actual handmade nature. Is that the same kind of approach that you like to take?
In the early days of Scalescenes, quite a few people approached me to offer their services to laser cut my kits and print them even, and package them up and put them in model shops, a la the bagged up kits that you can get in model shops. But I guess I've always resisted that because I just didn't want Scalescenes, it sort of lost a lot of its, a lot of the Scalescene advantages just sort of instantly go flying out the window, being able to reprint mistakes, the ability to select which brick texture you want, all those things just sort of fly out the window once you start printing and setting aside the cost of the printing. But, you know, I guess when Chris in Den sort of approached me, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago to ask about sort of laser cutting the base layers out, I was thinking to myself, well, look, you know, I think it's a really good idea, because if people who are older, who maybe have got, you know, sort of bit of arthritis or something in their fingers, and it is sometimes hard cutting out 2 mil. I mean,
2 mil is hard.
You work in 1 mil.
Exactly.
Because 1 mil's the heavy, so you don't have to worry about it. But, you know, I guess I'm just trying to sort of broaden that market out so that people can just still access the products without, and then all they have to do is basically just cut out the paper, which is fantastic. So nice so I think it's and I have to say, I don't make anything from Chris and Dan or the laser cutting. I mean, it's basically I just supply him the files and he creates the cutouts. You know, basically I don't get any sort of kickback or anything like that. So it's really just I sort of see it as just a bit of a service. To be added. And, you know, it's the same with a lot of the other sort of smaller cottage industries that have sort of popped up, you know, the chimney pots, and up until recently the etched brass windows and stuff like that. You know, all of that was just a sort of a, you know, I didn't get anything from it. It was just, I just wanted to value add to the product, to the kits, I suppose. So, yeah.
So one thing that I've always been intrigued with is I use Inkscape to do my scratch building, and my canvas is an absolute mess. You know, I'm like, this is the original drawing, I'll clone it, I'll put it over there, I'll put the bricks paper on, I'll do the little details, I'll move over there, and when I'm finished, I've got this incredible mess of bits. And if I go back after even 3 months, I can't even remember what I was thinking. And people have sometimes said to me, why don't you offer Chandwell things as kits? I'm just thinking, there's no way I could turn this mess into a kit. So I'm interested in how do you work? Because the kits, when you get them in the PDFs, they're so beautifully laid out, beautifully designed. They're actually almost like a work of art in their own right. So take us through your design process a little bit. Where do you start and how do you end up at the end? How much effort goes into the final finishing in many ways?
Yeah, well, I guess, so I use Adobe InDesign. I adjust and create new textures using Adobe Photoshop. So, but essentially, I sort of start with a sort of similar approach to you. So, hang on, let me see if I can pull it up here. Hang on, excuse me, I'll just drag this over. Here we go. So let's have a look. So so here we go. So this is about a 2 meter by 2 meter page. So this is This is the kit. This is the artwork for the shops that I've just released, the row of shops. So essentially, what I'll do is I'll design the entire kit on a giant sort of 2 meter by 2 meter page, and then what I'll do is I will sort it all into medium, heavy, and light card, print only, and then comes the fun part of basically essentially just fitting everything onto the page, which I guess, you know, which I actually quite enjoy. I actually quite enjoy the challenge of, it's like a sort of a giant jigsaw puzzle, you know, actually working out how I'm going to fit the different parts on, and just trying to work out a logical way that, you know, trying to work out a logical way as people build them. So it's no good putting some tiny little part that relates to some other part that you've built, you know, 15 steps back. You know, you've got to try and sort of cluster each of the sections together, I suppose. So, yeah, so basically that's it. I just essentially just put the whole thing together into one big file. And then from there, I'll just obviously just grab each of those A4 pages and put them onto individual A4 pages, and then I export those as a PDF file, A4, and then I start building basically. And some weeks later, a kit pops out the other end with a little bit of tweaking. But
are you telling me that you designed it like that before you even started building it?
Yeah, so I'll basically design it in its entirety and lay it all out so that it's all set up. So basically, it's almost. In fact, I guess when I'm building it, it's sort of just minor sort of tweaks as I go, really. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, essentially, the reason I can do that is because I just know that that's going to work. I know that I've included enough of a tab there to wrap around that window aperture or whatever. So it's really just a case of most of the changes are really just little tiny tweaks like, oh, gee, it'd be nice if I just sort of shaved half a mil off the flashing around the chimney or something, or maybe just raise the chimney flashing up a little bit or something like that. So that's generally the all the sort of changes I do as I go along. So I've never had to sort of completely start from scratch, thankfully. But there's always potential there to do that, I suppose. But
that's incredible. That's a genuine surprise to me that you actually design the entire kit first and then build it. I didn't expect that would be the way you worked. It's fascinating to see that. People say that I've got a lot of patience because I'm an N scale and I cut out tiny things. People say you must have so much patience. But where I don't have patience is I've got something I want to do with this wall, so I'll draw it and then I'll print it with 2 or 3 things on a sheet of A4 and get that done, and then go and design and draw the next bit. I couldn't imagine the patience required to do all of that up front. It's just not how my mind works. So it's fascinating.
I do have to try and work in a if I end up having a school holiday or something like that, and I end up with sort of like a couple of weeks in between the design process. I do have to sort of just pick up the thread again in the design ring. And occasionally what I'll do is I'll add little notes just so that I know roughly what I was intending, because I know that I know that there's just too much there reaches a point, what is there, like about 30 pages on this row of shops kit. There's a point where it just becomes too much to sort of wrangle in your mind. So you just have to work it in just little sections. So
And something else that I like. I know that if we make a mistake making one of your kits, we print it out again and do it. And I notice every so often with a new kit, the first people who've built it will say, I think this annotation's wrong on this page, and you fix it and re-release it immediately, and so it works. That's the beauty of the download kits from both sides, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Look, I guess it goes back to why I'm sort of not really interested in producing printed kits, because I completely lose that freedom to tweak a kit. Sort of 24 hours after it's been released, I can upload a brand new version that fixes whatever problem, and everybody can just use their original link to just download the new version. So it is a good process in that way. Whereas if I got them all printed, it's all sort of locked in. There's sort of 5,000 of them sitting all packaged in boxes ready to go to model shops. It'd be an absolute sort of
nightmare.
It'd be an absolute nightmare to discover that there was something wrong with them. So I feel really, and I guess maybe that helps me to push the boundaries a little bit further with different techniques and things like that. I guess because I feel as though I've got that little bit of a safety net underneath me that I can always upload it if it doesn't work, or I've made some mistake, then it sort of just gives me that reassurance that I can just sort of plough on ahead and just try some new techniques. It's sort of, whereas I'd just be a little bit more conservative, and the kits would be just a little bit more, just be a little simpler and a little bit more basic if I was sort of going down that sort of safe road, I suppose, to try and ensure that I didn't make a mistake.
It's the freedom to make mistakes, isn't it? Absolutely. It's and I think a lot of Chandwell's like that. My videos are filled with I tried this, it didn't work, I chucked it out, or I squashed it, because it's just like, if you've got that freedom, it helps your creativity, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to make mistakes along the road. So
absolutely.
that's definitely the way to go. So
So I don't know how many kits there currently are in the Scalescenes range, but there's a lot now, and you've been making it for 20 years, like you said. So do you have a particular favourite kit of your own?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess as I'm always sort of designing new stuff, and it's that sort of it's a sort of creative sort of journey for me, I suppose. So the simple answer is, I suppose, my last kit was my favourite kit, because it's full of stuff that I haven't done before, maybe, or just slight variations. So That's good. But I guess if I look back in the last few years, I'd say that I'm particularly fond of the shops on the slope, which in many respects owes a lot to you and to Adrian. So in this sort of rather nice sort of loop, you guys basically looking at the way you've done some of your shop fronts and facades, I thought to myself, I've just got to have a go at doing something interesting like that. You know, that looks so much fun. So I guess, yeah, I love doing the shops on the slope. So, you know, again, I wanted to sort of capture, and I couldn't do exactly what you guys do in terms of all those, you know, using sort of dollhouse frames for you know, little details and stuff. But, you know, I've tried to capture that sort of lovely sort of eclectic sort of mix of architectural styles you see in a row, Victorian row of shops like that, and you know, that sort of higgledy-piggledy roof lines and things like that, and you know, that's the sort of really what I wanted to capture. I'm really happy with how it sort of turned out. So yeah, I guess in some ways you've you know, it's just, you guys have sort of fed into my products and given me a little bit of a kick up the arse to come up with some kits that are just a little bit more, you know, just push that boundary a little bit further, I suppose. So yeah, it's been,
I've seen a lot of people who've made that kit on the slope, and they do look absolutely fantastic. I do like things that are on a slope. And speaking of shops on a slope, I've heard that there's a new business moving into number 11 Station Road in Chandwell.
That's right. I hear there is. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it.
Yes, so we'll leave that there. We'll see what comes up early in the new year.
That's good.
Obviously, the cathedral is taking up a lot of my time at the moment, but again, Scalescenes papers have been the only thing that I've used on there. You know, there's been no need to go to the cathedral and photograph it because there's always something in the Scratchbuilders Yard that matches.
Yeah.
And just I'd like to thank you as well for helping me with the roof tiles. So being a Yorkshire building, it's a stone rather than slate. So
I think, you're welcome. I mean, I love what you're doing with the cathedral. It's just a beautiful model. I think it's going to be spectacular when it finishes. So it's going to be fantastic, I think.
Yeah. So, well, once it's in the cathedral, you can, next time you're in the UK, pop by and have a look.
I will, definitely. Yeah.
So
great.
Excellent. So I think that's everything. John, thank you for joining me on Chandwell. It's early morning for me, early afternoon for you. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed the chat. So.
Yeah, and I want to thank you as well, because I just, on behalf of all the other card modelers there, I just want to thank you for all your work on your YouTube channel. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's an amazing resource for people, and I refer customers to you all the time. It's a lot easier than me having to explain how to do such and such a thing. I just say, have a look at this YouTube channel.
Yeah. Well, as part of this, I'm going to be doing a Scalescenes special. So this is this conversation is part of it, whether it's within the video or separate. But because you know the free kits, I'm going to download the kits. We're going to make it in 00 and in N, just to show people how it goes. I mean, I don't have to do it in great detail because there are videos out there already. So I'm not going to not reinvent the wheel. But you know, it's going to be nice just to show what the Scalescenes method is and get people introduced to it.
That sounds great. Yeah. So anyway, that'd be brilliant. So yeah, good. All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Are we still? Is that done now?
I think that's done now. Yeah, let's go.
And is that a cut?
I hope you enjoyed that. I loved every minute of that conversation. I think I could have spoken for hours longer. In fact, there's a few little snippets that I cut out of the main thing ready for you after this. So until the next video, which will be me putting together this kit, thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time. I see things so differently, like the ones I did on Station Road. Round the front, the elegant Georgian, like three stories. You've got the shop fronts, then you've got a set of windows and windows, but you go around the back and there's 4 layers. So what on earth's going on the inside? It's these kinds of things. It's fascinating.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, that's what I sort of really wanted to sort of capture some of that in the back of that one.
That's beautiful.
That's the sort of thing I was trying to create there. It's just like this weird sort of jumble of what on earth's going on there. But that's exactly what buildings are like, right? You know, just because they just get added on and and stairs get added, and then they add a bathroom in here, and then they have to move the stairs over here, and then we better close off that window and then put another window in here. It's just amazing. I love it.
The back of that kit, it's just absolutely beautiful, because it's exactly what I've tried to capture on Chandwell, that just complete nonsense. And you look at it and think, what on earth going on there? And that atmosphere there is brilliant.
Have you ever seen this book? Let's see. There's a really interesting sort of book, this book here. Have you ever seen that book?
No, I've not seen that. That looks good.
Okay, because it's got just as a side, I'll just show you, it's got an amazing map in it and I've seen a couple of other maps similar in a couple of other books, but essentially, can I find it now is the question.